Tim, your article, a Pension for All, Pension Reform in the United Kingdom, was published in the Journal in the fall of 2009, which means that you wrote it probably over the course of the summer. And that's now a year and a half ago. A lot has happened since you wrote that article, which really gave a very nice background to pension situation in the UK, the studies that led to a suggestion that reform was appropriate. And there was just this idea of a special kind of pension plan that would serve the needs of workers who currently didn't have a pension plan. But that was then and now is now. Can you bring us up to date?
Absolutely, and I'm delighted to be on this call and to talk with you today, Keith. So the principal things that have happened between the fall of 2009 and now, and here we are in January 2011, is that there was a general election in the United Kingdom, and that led to a change of government and the introduction of our coalition government between the Liberal Democrats and the Conservative Party. Now, the reform package that we are a part of was a creature of the previous administration, and the new administration wanted to review the reforms, and within that review, the role of Nest. So, over the summer, that review, led by an economist, Paul Johnson, happened, and it reported in the autumn of last year. And one of its key conclusions was that Nest should continue. The government then had to decide, okay, so now it wanted to continue with these reforms, could it afford to? And so our programme, along with all other programmes in government, was subject to the prioritisation within what's called the Comprehensive Spending Review. That concluded in late October of last year, and that too concluded that this reform package, with Nest as a part of it, should go forward. Now, I've used the word nest twice in that response. When we wrote the article, I was the chief executive of something called PADA, which was the Personal Accounts Delivery Authority. So yes. Another thing that changed along the way was that through a lot of work with potential members, we researched what would be an appropriate name for this pension plan, and Nest was the winning name. And so we've been Nest now for the last few months. Yet another thing that happened was that the organisation, PADA, was stood down. So last July, that's July 2010, PADA disappeared, and 1 minute later, the National Employment Savings Trust Corporation, the Nest Corporation, came alive. And those of us that were working for PADA were transferred across into Nest to be its first executive. But Nest is quite a different organisation from PADA. Nest is a corporation that's been set up to run a pension scheme under trust, whereas PADA was a delivery organisation and policy development organisation that was very much part of the government machine. So I am now supporting a group of trustees as their chief executive, but I'm not a trustee member. I'm part of this thing called the Nest Corporation, and that group of trustees, led by Lawrence Churchill, is the decision-making body, and we are now in the advanced stages of preparing for the actual launch of the pension scheme.
Tim, top 3 priorities looking forward today as a chief executive. What are the things you have to get right?
I have to launch a scheme this year which is fully functioning and gains credibility with the various commentators that are looking to see what we do. That's the first thing I've got to do. The second thing I've got to do is to work and help the trustees to make Nest as a corporation a properly governed corporation. So the whole panoply of work to support that, whether it's a risk management framework, internal audit, external audit, all manner of things, properly codified business processes, a comprehensive set of policies for the things that we do. All of that is being done because, again, the level of interest that there is in Nest means that everybody is interested in kind of everything we do. And if I was to pick out a third, I think it would be to communicate our role and to separate that role out from the duties of which we're a part. Nest is just a scheme. What's really changing in the UK from next year is a duty on all employers to automatically enroll the vast bulk of their workers into a workplace pension. Nest is one of their choices, but they can go and use existing pensions, they can go out to private providers and choose another pension. The key change is the introduction of automatic enrolment.
Right. So now look beyond next year, 3, 4, 5 years down the road, and if I say the word success, how would you describe it? How would you capture that Nest has become a successful project 3, 4, 5 years down the road?
I think I would say that hundreds of thousands of employers and millions, a small number of millions of workers in total that work for those firms are enjoying being part of Nest. And Nest is in itself part of a successful automatic enrolment regime, and commentators are saying that represented a turning point in UK pension provision from a history of the previous 10 years when overall participation in workplace pensions had been slowly decreasing to a position where now it's resurgent, and pension saving in the UK in the workplace is on its way to becoming the norm.
Yep, right. So now the flip side of success, which is the what keeps you awake at night question. How could this enterprise fail?
Okay, well, there are obviously a number of practical ways in which it could fail. The systems that we bring to bear through our partners to make this thing work in practice could be unreliable, and naturally there's a huge amount of work going on to make sure that that doesn't happen, and we're working with world-class partners to bring all of that through. I think another thing that could happen would be that the climate of opinion is negative towards the reforms, not just Nest, and the reforms would be seen as something that are some kind of scam by the government. It's just another tax. It's not something that's going to be in the interest of people, and that therefore workplace pension saving generally is shunned and is not seen as being a good thing to do. And I think for Nest, well, we've got to be, in a few years' time, up there as being hopefully an exemplar of good governance right across the issues that that represents, whether it's responsible investment or whether it's internal controls or the way in which we communicate with members. So we've got to really continue to work very hard right across that. And just to keep as an example of one of the things we've just launched is a piece of work on vocabulary, where as we research the target market that we're aimed at, which is people in the UK that earn up to £35,000, if you say, do you think you'll be taking an annuity or trivially commuting to them, they're likely to hit you, because they haven't got a clue what you're talking about. So yes, we will not be using words like annuity, we'll talk about retirement income, and we'll not be using phrases like trivial commutation, which is completely meaningless to all everyday folks. We'll be talking about taking your pension pot as cash. And that work was launched last week. It's just a stage on our journey of developing vocabulary and developing a member engagement strategy that works. But we've got to do that, otherwise people will not get close to Nest and not understand it. And we want them to understand it.
Right. And so I think you've successfully identified the communication side, the narrative of this whole enterprise as being critical. How do you organize to be effective in that area? Is that a special group that you charge to do that, or how does that work?
In part. So we are absolutely member-centric in what we do. So how did we develop those vocabulary ideas? Well, we did it in research with members of the target market. So we did it in qualitative sessions where we said, look, here's the phrase, trivial commutation. They all laughed. This is what it means. Under certain circumstances, you can take your pension pot as cash instead of buying an annuity. Let's now talk about how you, now you understand what it is, would recommend that we talk to people like you about it. And that's how we did it in research. And so that is the foundation stone of how we develop everything we do, is in research. I do have some extremely talented people who have a long track record of this kind of work, working full-time in the organisation, and we're supported by specialist agencies. And our scheme administration partner, Tata Consultancy Services, itself a massive corporation with 160,000 employees around the world, TCS also have their own usability specialists, and we're working very closely with them. So we do focus very much on this. This is an e-enterprise, and so the design of our websites and the other electronic ways in which we'll interact with our members is critical.
The final question here. You mentioned there's a lot of interest in Nest and its progress inside United Kingdom. As you well know, there's a great deal of interest outside the United Kingdom as well. Any country that's currently looking at pension reform has to be very interested in what's happening in the UK. And I would use Canada as an example, very much at a stage now where there's been consensus in the country that we need to do something with the uncovered part of the workforce, and that we need some kind of a mechanism to fit into that void. What kind of advice, based on your journey this far, what kind of advice would you offer a country like Canada as they head down this road?
I think the advice would be this. Try to find some extremely clever people. So the UK equivalent were the pension commissioners, led by Adair Turner with Jeannie Drake and John Hills, to do a politically neutral, dispassionate analysis of the problem and work up some answers which are then worked into a consensus by bringing together employers, the industry, people that represent workers and consumers more generally, and really work that consensus building hard, and then make sure that when you've got the consensus around whatever the solutions elements are, keep that consensus going, and then try very hard to, as much as you can, get the people with the right skill sets to do the right things in the construction of the solution. So, for example, the relevant thing in the UK would be that the officials who decided that the government should procure that a new pension nest should sit alongside private pensions as part of this reform package, realised that they weren't personally the right people to actually do that, and therefore set up PADA as a sort of slightly arm's length delivery organisation, staffed with a mix of private sector and public sector people, so that the right skills were put against what is essentially a financial services new product development. But the most important thing is a strong evidence-based analysis of the issue with a bespoke solution built, because every country is different, and then build consensus, build it again, and keep it going so that it can survive multiple parliaments and multiple political flavours of government, because these things tend to be, in their implementation, of a duration that require you to go across the political boundary of an election.
Tim, excellent advice. Thank you for this. Great conversation.